Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the July 27th edition of the AC Snakepit Video Roundtable. Uh, with me is Kishi, James Atwood, and Soko, and I'm Clevo. I'm your only friend, but not your only friend, but I'm a little glowing friend. But anyway, enough of that. Let us talk about Diamondbacks baseball topics and other such minutia. The first thing I wanted to get to, panel, was a thing that happened today. The Diamondbacks played the Phillies over the weekend, and you're thinking, oh, two terrible teams with two very short-sighted general managers. That's not really much to write home about. But in today's game, there was a very odd play where there was a pop-up to about the mid outfield. Didi Gregorius thinks he's going to catch it, but he doesn't. Womp womp. But they say no, it's fine because Ryan Howard, who was slower than Ryan Howard 5 years ago, is routing home, and we could get him out by 20 feet, and ergo they do. But here's the twist: because of the new home plate collision rules, and after a review, Howard, who never actually touched the base, is called safe because Miguel Montero had the temerity to field the ball while in a position where he happened to be blocking the plate. Which, yeah. So with that happening, if you've watched the replay, one, how did that make you feel? And two, what does this sort of say about the implementation of what is colloquially called the Buster Posey rule?
Well, I mean, I don't really have any particular feeling about it. It's, I suppose, frustrating, but whatever. I guess it would probably feel worse if we were in contention, but we're not, so I don't have much feels about it. I will say that in general, I'm not sure how I feel about the way the call was applied, because it seemed clear to me that Montero was not blocking the lane initially and only slid to his left to then field the ball, which brought him into the lane, which I was under the impression is acceptable. It wasn't like he was just hanging out with his family, having a good time in the lane. So to me, that's a little bit problematic, and I think it just kind of it goes back to this sort of NFLification of baseball rules, where now we're going to be getting into discussions where we're watching replays like, well, is he blocking the plate? Is he causing a running, is he creating a running lane or blocking it? Did he make a football move? And other stupid questions, when it should be just, did he touch the plate or not? Was he tagged or not? Baseball, that's all it is in baseball. And that we're going to start adding these sort of like hand-wavy subjective rules is a bit annoying, but clouds.
Personally, I mean, like, I understand the intent of the rule. I mean, it's pretty clear. But, I mean, yeah, I do feel like sometimes the way that it is applied is just... I mean, it's not like this was a close play to the plate. I mean, it's not like Montero was standing on top of home and there was basically no way for Ryan Howard to get in there. I mean, I think it was... I mean, it's almost to the point where why don't they just want to set up a lane that splits off of the third baseline like they have in softball fields when the elderly play softball? So they just run off 15 feet early, and if the ball gets to home plate before they get out of the lane, then they're out. Otherwise, they're safe. It's ridiculous, I think, especially in a play like this. I don't feel like it was... I don't know. I don't feel like this was the kind of situation necessarily where this rule was designed to be applied. It's kind of just overzealous, I feel like, to say, oh, nope, you were blocking the lane when he was 45, 30, 20 feet away. before you got the ball, then obviously this guy should be safe. But,
Well, it does. I think it does address the situation, though, or the rule was written with this situation in mind, because previously, before the rule, okay, Montero takes the ball. He's now blocking the plate. Ryan Howard only has two choices, y'all, which is to either attempt to run him over or give himself up. And most baseball players are not going to just give themselves up right in front of home plate unless they're caught in a pickle. So he probably would have tried to truck him, which is the whole point of the Buster Posey rule, is to prevent truckings.
James, what do you think?
I think it's one of the dumbest rules that's ever been implemented in baseball. And if they want to protect players from collisions and so forth, maybe they should look at second base too with the takeout rule there. I think it's kind of funny that Ryan Howard is safe today when essentially the very same thing happened on the Chris Owings failed in the park home run attempt that put him on the DL, and Chris Owings was out by 20 feet, and they decided to call that because he was out by 20 feet, the blocking the plate rule didn't apply, and he was out. Now, Ryan Howard, who's slower than molasses and had absolutely no chance of ever being safe, is lumbering down the line and kind of doing a half-ass jog and pointing, oh, he's blocking the plate, so I'm safe. It's kind of ridiculous. If you're out by 20 feet, you're out by 20 feet. And are we going to start calling it every time that, a guy coming down from third to home gets into a pickle? Well, the catcher was blocking the line because the runner never turned around to go back to third. I mean, there has to be some kind of sanity. I mean, if they really want to defend the catcher and they're worried about trucking, just make a rule that if there's going to be a play, which would be on anything other than a walk-off or a home run, that the runner has to slide into home. Period. There won't be any trucking then. And if the catcher is blocking off the plate, then he gets what he gets. I mean, it's not terribly difficult to make it safer without running into ridiculous situations like this where it seems like every week we've got a new way to interpret the rule.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Soko brought up something that I was going to bring up, that it does feel like one of those like NFL rules where it's like, yeah, don't get full of yourself, dude. Where it's
I'm gonna steal all of your points.
oh, no.
Then I'm never gonna call them again.
You cad. No, I was gonna say it is like one of those NFL rules where it's just like, yeah, it's just everything's so subjective. And I used to think I knew what a catch was, but five years ago or so, and then now it's like I don't know anything, and it is sort of like the advent of replay, at least in the NFL case, sort of like has sort of not helped with that. The way they implement it, because they just like look at everything so slowly, whereas when you see it in real time, you get a whole different thing. But yeah, it's the rule itself just has like way too many subjective points, and I think whoever was manning the replay booth in New York may have followed the rule to its letter, but sort of like they followed the rule to its letter, but it just shows sort of how absurd it is conceptually. And another thing is that James kind of hit on this, is that why is home plate so special, but like second base is second base is not, with takeout slides and stuff. And you can't go trucking into someone when you're running down first base trying to leg out an infield single. So why should you be able to do that at home? I know some people would like me saying that because for some reason having collisions at home plate makes them feel more like a man. I'm not going to judge. But it feels like, why not just treat home plate like any other base. Like Jay said, you just either slide in or you just get tagged out. There shouldn't. It just seems like too much gray area. I could be wrong. We all agree. So what?
No, I'd agree. I think the only other point I'd want to bring up is what? I'm the only commenter so far who you don't feel the need to single out what he's spoken about? Jeez, thanks, man.
And Kishi is right about everything always. I don't know. Somebody's mother here points out in the comment, could the D-backs have played the game under protest given the bad application of the Buster Posey rule? That's the thing. Because of what I said, how the rule is so subjective and stuff, I don't think there would have been... I mean, they could have, but it probably would have been honored. Much like, if you remember that wild card game 2 years ago against the Braves and the Cardinals with that weird infield fly rule kind of thing, which the Braves played under protest, but it's like, nope, they technically followed the rule as written. So, tough shit, Atlanta. And then they tore down the stadium in protest.
Move to Cobb.
Those fans are pretty hardcore.
Yep. But yeah, it just seems like it's probably going to be one of those things that the league looks at in the offseason, or they might not. I don't know. We all kind of have a vague idea of how Major League Baseball operates in that way.
Well, Joe Torre has already come out and publicly apologized at least twice this season for bad calls involving this rule. It's hard to imagine that by the time next spring rolls around, they won't have done some work refining this rule, because that Torre is sick and tired of having to go out in front of everybody and have egg on his face, and the new commissioner, whoever it winds up being, isn't going to want to have to deal with this as a constant headache, for his first year in office. They have bigger things to worry about, like where the hell is Oakland going to play, or what are they going to do about draft slots?
When are they ever going to fix those terrible blackout rules?
You guys are funny.
I'd love it if they do that, but that's never going to happen.
I think also they've got other things to worry about, like what do you do with a problem like Maria?
Valid.
And those of you who had 15 minutes in for our first musical theater reference, collect your winnings. You're good for at least one of those a week here on the Snakepit Video Roundtable. That is my guarantee to you. But yeah, it does seem like, of all of baseball's various problems, this does seem like an easy one to fix or take some positive corrective action. But we'll see. We'll see what Rob Manfred, or someone who probably is still going to be Rob Manfred, does in the coming year with that. Yeah. So that kind of cost the Diamondbacks the game today, but it's like, who cares? They're kind of terrible. The Phillies won the series, so we're more terrible from them. Ergo, better draft pick? But speaking of things that terrible teams do, the trade deadline is upcoming between this episode and next episode, specifically Thursday. The Diamondbacks are in a position to sell. They have sold before. They traded away Brandon McCarthy. They traded away Joe Thatcher and the immortal Tony Campana. But so I'll ask each of you a two-pronged question. What should the Diamondbacks do, and what will they do? Because this is probably going to be two different answers. Whoever wants to jump in on that first.
Personally, I just think they should start, getting rid of what they can. I'm trying to remember. I saw a rumor that they were, and I can't remember which team it was. It was that they were looking for trade offers on, I want to say Hill, but weren't listening on Prado. Yeah. Which, I could see that. I would feel bad about Aaron Hill leaving. But, if he... sometimes you just want to let players go free and maybe end up on a better team. But honestly, I'm not even sure what's going on. I'm kind of concerned that despite the idea that we have made our moves and we've heard that the team is still looking. I do just have this fear that we're not going to see a big trade issue come up. But also, while they're pursuing their trades, and I mean, this is a plan that they could also continue after the trade deadline, I think that they should do some research into just what makes Tony Campana immortal. Does he know the location of the Lazarus pits? Is it just something he was born with? I don't think he's part vampire. That would be very surprising. But, I mean,
He could be a lich.
He could, but, I mean, traditionally, they've got, the skeletal appearance. And that's not how I remember him.
He's pretty skinny.
He is. I mean, I suppose he could have some sort of high-powered enchantment he relies on, but in a baseball stadium of that many people, there's going to be somebody who's going to nat 20 their will save versus his enchantment and see through his disguise. It's too big of a risk to take.
Posting on some random truther website, and since they're already talking about chemtrails and other things, no one's going to believe them.
That is a good point, yeah.
I have nothing to add to that. Just James or Tim, what do you guys think?
Well, what I think the Diamondbacks are going to do is probably not much of anything big at the deadline. If they do make some moves, it'll probably be in the off season, where they actually make a real move. I don't think they're going to find a taker for Hill the way Hill's played so far this year, without eating the vast majority of his contract. And at that point, that kind of defeats the purpose of moving him. They might still make a move from the bullpen, because that's what Hall keeps talking about, their strength and where people keep calling about. But the people that are in the bullpen, they've already kind of said are untouchable, like Ziegler and Reed, who are probably the two they should be trying to move right now, especially given what closers have been bringing back in terms of prospect value, and Houston Street and Soria from the Rangers. And Houston Street is a very good closer. Soria is very mediocre, and yet they both brought back real packages. And move Reed, move Ziegler, and get yourself 3, 4, maybe even 5 young players. It's not like we don't have Jake Barrett still waiting to come up, sitting in Reno destroying everybody. It just seems kind of silly to not take advantage of the market when it makes itself available, especially when those guys, especially Ziegler, aren't going to be around in 2016 or 2017, when the Diamondbacks are way better positioned to be a contender than they are this year, obviously. What they should do, they ought to move those guys. They should probably move Prado and Hill, and maybe even Trumbo if they could. Trumbo's going to have far more value to an American League team than he ever will to us. But I don't think any of those things are actually likely to happen, since they keep talking about how they're planning on contending next year. And so I think if there is any move, it might be something really small, like moving a Randall Delgado or moving one of the minor league middle infielders or something like that.
I think what they should do is trade Kevin Towers to the Padres for a couple of weekend passes to Comic-Con. Unfortunately, what they will do is probably just something stupid. Probably like trade one of our top prospects for, I don't know, a reliever or a shortstop. I think Jim's watching, so they're probably going to trade for 5 shortstops. One's for you, Jim.
Archie Bradley for Nick Punto. Write it down.
Yep, that is my click to pick.
Get money. Yeah, it does seem weird that we're hanging on so tight to Ziegler and Reed because, as James mentioned, the Tigers, who we just saw this last week, their bullpen's kind of shitty. Like, they try to make it get better, which is nice for them. But yeah, it's just like and they gave up some real pieces to the Rangers for them. So it's like, why can't we do that? And then Soria, same thing. And then Soria, then Street to the Angels, same thing. That's what I meant to say the first time, but my brain doesn't work. And not a reliever, but still in the realm of mediocre players getting traded. Jake Peavy going to the Giants for living, breathing humans. So it looks like this is like a really nice seller's market. So it's like, why the bad word I'm not technically supposed to say here? Are you not aggressively trying to move some of these pieces? You could, build for the future. What is wrong with you, LaRussa Towers?
Unfortunately, I do agree with James's assessment, which is they probably believe that they can compete next year with maybe some small tweaks. And that's really sad. Really sad. I feel bad for them.
Yeah, like, I've said this in various places before. If the team was better and in vague contention next season, that I could see that. It would have to be a sort of 2007, 2011 sort of lightning catches in a bottle, some guys have career years kind of things. But I don't see it happening with Kevin Towers in charge because Lord knows if he's still around, he's going to move something for something that's way less and more expensive for that something. Diagram methods.
Well put, Charlie.
Can AJ Pierzynski play in the outfield? That sounds like a pretty good Kevin Towers guy.
He could, yeah. I think AJ Pierzynski will be our next manager. That's my hot take.
That would be actually really funny.
It would be infuriating.
Guy's getting out of line, he's just going to punch him in the junk.
It would be infuriating, but yet so entertaining at the same time.
Yeah, especially given how much Giants fans hate him. Like, White Sox fans obviously are okay with AJ Pierzynski because he won a championship with them. But Giants fans, you bring up AJ Pierzynski and they're just like...
Pierzynski is a player that if he's not on your team doing good things, you have to hate him because he's such an unapologetic ass. But
he's a heel.
But when he's on your team, you're glad you have him because the guy just plays ball. Now, granted, this year he's kind of stunk, but, after that many years behind the plate, you're allowed to start having some down seasons.
Ergo, why we move him to the outfield.
But my question is, which do Giants fans hate more, AJ Pierzynski or Jim using the word Schadenfreude?
We've never seen AJ Pierzynski and Jim in the same room together, so how do we know? They're not. And this is even better. AJ Pierzynski loves wrestling and appeared in a wrestling segment in 2006 after they won the World Series. He could also be Scottish.
Whoa, that's heavy stuff right there.
I think my only defense against that conspiracy theory is I trust Mrs. Snakepit to have better taste in guys than AJ Pierzynski.
And I'm pretty sure that no Scot would allow himself to go by Pierzynski.
That's just what they want you to believe. I read this on the same website where I read that Tony Campana is a lich, and they've got some solid info there.
And wasn't there once a Snakepit Fest where the White Sox played Was Jim there? If he was not,
He was there. I don't remember which catcher started for the White Sox. I don't remember. I could go find my scorebook and look it up, but I'm lazy. So we're just going to assume that AJ Pierzynski wasn't playing that day.
yeah, it all makes sense. And you could read this on infosnakepit.com and how they're trying to put Puig in the water, as discussed on a previous episode. And I just want to say, Pierzynski, I just typed it into an anagram generator. Pierzynski spells yes, rink zip. Just think on that one for a second.
You know what AJ stands for?
What?
Jackass?
Liz says a jackass, which is pretty good. It's a gem. It's right there.
Dun, dun.
What the twist? So, Jim hasn't actually denied it in the comments yet. So we're just going to say it right now. And we're going to keep that meme going till the end of the season, that he is, in fact, former Twins, Giants, White Sox, Red Sox, and current Cardinal catcher AJ Pierzynski. And I'm kind of worried about myself that I knew every team he played on in order off the top of my head. Yeah, Reddit, our baseball conspiracy. That's where we go for that kind of thing. I think we'll change gears here because, the truth is out there, but we don't want to blow people's minds too much. Even though the people need to know, so look it up on the internet. The other big baseball thing that happened this weekend was the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. The people who were inducted were Frank Thomas, Tom Glavine, Craig Maddox, Bobby Cox, Tony La Russa, and Joe Torre. There was a neat fact I saw somewhere that the three managers that were inducted into the Hall of Fame were the three managers the Diamondbacks beat up on when they got to the World Series. But they're definitely not Hall of Fame manager. We still love you, BB. But what I wanted to throw out to you, and I did send you guys this link, when the next time the Hall of Fame comes around, who would you vote for, and who do you think gets in? Because I'm just reading off some of the first-time names are pretty, because you got Randy Johnson, you got Pedro Martinez, you got John Smoltz. Those are three guys that I think are going to get in, if not the first year, at some point. Then you still have, returning guys on the ballot like Craig Biggio, who fell like 3 votes short of induction last year, which that's awkward. Guys like Craig Biggio, Mike Piazza, Jeff Bagwell, Tim Raines, and you've got the PED guys like Clemens and Bonds, and you still got some interesting names like Edgar Martinez, Alan Trammell, et cetera, et cetera. So if you had your druthers, which of those guys would get in?
Looking at the first time ballots, Tony Clark, if only because I would really like to listen to him talk for however long they want to let him talk at the Hall of Fame. I feel like Craig Biggio is gonna make it in next year. I feel like that's kind of it'd be terrible if he didn't. But looking at the first time players, Randy Johnson, he would be my big vote. Probably Pedro Martinez too. Like John Smoltz, there's some definite arguments that could be made there. Personally, I don't understand the idea of not voting for guys just because it's their first ballot. I feel like if somebody deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. You don't need to kind of wait, like you have to haze them and get them in their second or third year so it doesn't go to their head. Because, baseball players, you've given them millions of dollars to play a children's game. You totally want them to be humble. But yeah, no, I also really liked looking at this year's class of inductees. I almost said graduating class, not it. Because just it is one of the first times that I've looked back at a group and had that whole, oh, hey, that's my youth nostalgia group going in. So it was pretty interesting to watch.
Well, I mean, obviously Randy Johnson and Pedro Martinez for the new guys. I think John Smoltz will get in eventually. Depending on how many of my spots got filled up, I don't know if he'd be on my first ballot, just because he might get filled up by some guys that have been avoided because of PED stink. Like, I think Barry Bonds should be in. I think Roger Clemens should be in. And I don't care what y'all think. I still think Jeff
Did you know that
Bagwell
Barry
should
Bonds
get in.
went to ASU?
Yes, he did. And that in no way biases my opinion. I think Bagwell should get in. I think you could make a case for Messina and Schilling, but maybe not right away. Let them sweat a little bit. I think Biggio should get in. So I don't know. There's a lot of other guys too when you get a little bit further down the list, when you reorder it by WAR, that had pretty good peaks that you kind of, they were as good at least as some people that have already been in, like Nomar Garciaparra. As sad as that may be, he's already comparative to some of the guys that are already in the Hall of Fame. But those are some of the top names I think that I would go with first. The big question to me isn't so much like, is Randy Johnson going to get in? Of course he's going to get in. Has no steroid rumors for him. And he's one of the greatest pitchers of all time, so he's getting in. It's just a matter of whether he's going to be Diamondback or not. And I hope it happens, but I'm kind of thinking it's not going to, because he has the same amount of years that he was with us. He was with his first team, with the not his first team, but with the Mariners. So they may lean towards that, even though I would argue his best years were actually with us.
Well, I mean, just on that point, and then I'll get to you, Jay, because I just wanted to interject this point on what you said. They had Greg Maggs go in, blank cap and all, and anyone who watched him in the '90s is like, yeah, he should go in as a Brave. He only had like a few years with the Cubs, a few really good years, but as you said, he had more years with the Braves, and those were his best years, but they still did that. So yeah, if that's the case, then yeah, there's precedence for Randy being blank.
Well, Maddox asked for his to be blank, though, and
don't ruin my narrative.
Anyway, I think it's a no-brainer that Johnson, Martinez, and Smoltz are all going to get elected this year. And I think that with those three going in, that's all you're probably going to see. They don't generally make really big classes of inductees. I don't think that there's going to be enough of the first ballot haters that are going to keep those three off before letting them go in. With Maddox and Glavine going in this year, there are actually going to be plenty of people with that narrative of they need Smoltz to join them, and they're going to hurry up and get him in to put the three back together again. But there are plenty of, the ballot's limited to 10 people on it, and I could easily find 7 other people that are still on the ballot that should be in there, and there's a very good chance that none of them ever will be. Barry Bonds was a Hall of Famer before PEDs entered the game, and you know that because PEDs hadn't really been invented yet when he was already a Hall of Famer. But they'll continue to keep him out. Roger Clemens should be in there. Gary Sheffield should probably be in there, along with Lee Smith. I'd put Alan Trammell in there. Tim Raines I would put in there. If it weren't for some schmuck named Henderson, Tim Raines would have gone down as the greatest leadoff hitter of the last 75 years. So, and it would be easy to get to 10 guys that belong in the hall. But it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and there was actually, this is also a big thing. They announced also, the Hall of Fame did that we're going to make it 10 years on the ballot instead of 15 now, with a lot of the PEDs guys coming up, and a lot of people said, oh, they're just wanting to weed out those guys from the ballot. And but who that really screws over is Tim Raines, who's on his 8th year on the ballot. So instead of 7 more years, he gets 2. So sorry, Timmy. Better luck next time. But as to who I think will get in / who I vote for, I think since Biggio fell really short, I think he gets in this year just because with Maddox, Lavin, and Thomas off the ballot, he's an obvious one. And, if you're going to, if you think a guy like Derek Jeter is the first ballot Hall of Famer, which yeah he is, then Biggio is too. If you just look at raw stats, Biggio should get in. Piazza is an interesting one to look at because he has PED stink, even though he doesn't have PED proof, if that makes sense. But he's kind of close. If I had a vote, I'd vote for him. Bagwell's another interesting case. I agree with you guys. I think, as I said before, Johnson Martinez is false. Get it on. I think I'll get it on first ballot. But it's interesting, just how we care so much about a museum in rural New York. What can you do? But this is not an awkward pause at all.
It's only an awkward pause if we let it be awkward.
I do have to say, though, it is highly likely that the Hall of Fame is run by lizard people. I'm just asking questions.
Now, are these lizard people, are they in league with Tony Campana, the Lich, or is that a different thing?
It's a totally different thing. See, the Lich is its own deal. He's associated with the Illuminati, but the lizard people are they run the world, but the Illuminati are battling against them and want to take it from them.
The Illuminati have a much more old school traditional presence, whereas the lizard people are a more modern alien infestation is the problem.
So the lizard people are saber patricians, and the Illuminati really love RBIs.
Yes, that's why they love Tony Campana.
The Illuminati are the people who also do not want you do not mention a perfect game or a shutout, because it's bad luck.
Yep.
And so what does that have to do with putting Puig in the water? I'm just trying to connect the dots here.
Look, man, if we have
to see if he floats.
Are you implying he's a witch?
He's not saying that, but he's not saying that.
There we go.
I'm just saying that, okay, so he's Cuban, allegedly, and he somehow makes it over here, that smells like a CIA job to me. And I don't know if you guys know this, but they've been buying borium for years. Look it up, man. It's all there. It's all there. I'm just asking questions.
So where do the chemtrails come in? Again, just connecting dots.
Well, that's the borium.
Oh yeah. Duh. I don't listen to enough Coast to Coast. I'm sorry. Coast to Coast, if you don't know, is a conspiracy radio show that you could probably find somewhere. It's very entertaining, but not for the reasons they intend.
The Royals fan base should come up with their own version of that, but they could call it Yoast to Yoast.
Oh, the Royals. Jim asked a question that we sort of covered. Will RJ go in wearing a D-backs cap or Max, no particular cap? Depends on what he wants, I guess. Or the Hall of Fame could say, we don't care what you want. What are you? The reason people would would come here, whatever. You know what? You're wearing a Giants cap. That'll show you.
I think at that point, Randy Johnson would just kind of glare at them, shrug his shoulders, and go back to taking pictures of celebrities or at rock concerts. I would really hope he goes in with the Diamondbacks cap. I think, he's got, what did he win, like 87 Cy Youngs with us, I think. He's got his World Series MVP. I think that, he would be kind of the pinnacle of his career was with the Diamondbacks, so hopefully he goes in as the first Diamondback in the Hall of Fame.
He'll either be the first Diamondback or the first Mariner in the Hall of Fame. I think that's safe to say. As someone from that team. And if he's not the first Mariner, Ken Griffey Jr. will be. So lay off, Seattle. You've got someone else coming. Let us have something for once.
Yeah,
they really ought to have Edgar Martinez as well.
Really, who they should be inducting into the Hall of Fame is the 12th man.
Too soon, man. Too soon. And on that note, I think this is a good time to wrap up. I want to thank Ishi, James, and Toko here. I want to thank me because I'm cool. I want to thank all of you who are watching this now and in the future. I want to thank the news cycle this week for actually giving us something to talk about. And I want to thank nobody else. That's it. If you're not among that, you can go to hell. I kid. So be sure to visit azsnakepit.com, like us on Facebook, follow it on Twitter, read all the articles, follow any of us on Twitter if you want. I tell you handles, but go find it yourself. This is America, bootstraps, etc. So for the four of us, good night, and we'll see you next week.